Tim Dalmo, my partner, describes sustainability as attributes of a system, that systems that are highly adaptable and resilient and flexible. And that's what we're really talking about in terms of sustainable organizations. Organizations that are able to move quickly, change and adapt quickly. And those are certain characteristics that need to be built into the organization. Bob Doppelt, and I believe that's how you pronounce his name, he created a beautiful article and block of research back in 2003 that talks about the pitfalls or blunders that organizations make in considering becoming more and more sustainable. And he's listed a hierarchy of 7 blunders. And this hierarchy is, the first one is the most significant and most dominant. And as organizations start tackling these pitfalls, they become more and more sustainable. Their systems become more sustainable. So first I'd like to quickly list these blunders, and then I'd like to just spend a few moments on each. And to also say up front why this is important is that organizations can look at themselves in terms of how they're designed to be sustainable, and a consultant or leader or project management team can also look at these same blunders as a lens or filter to look at in terms of diagnosing the organization, in terms of its dynamic of sustainability, which is one of the 6 core areas of analysis that I use when I diagnose organizations. So the 7 blunders are, again, in order of priority. The first is a patriarchal thinking that leads to a false sense of security. The second is kind of a siloed approach to the way they're designed. The third is that they have no clear vision of sustainability in terms of their goals or design. Fourth is a real confusion between cause and effect. Fifth is a lack of information, accessibility, transparency of information and flow of information. The sixth is that there's no built-in mechanisms for continuous learning. And the last but not least is a failure to institutionalize those mechanisms and processes that really move an organization towards sustainability. So the first is a patriarchal thinking that leads to a false sense of security. It's the most common in organizations. It's that top-down, leader-driven approach. It could be a kind of a benign patriarchal system, or benign dictatorship where everybody loves the leader, but that they all depend on his or her opinions, and so no great level of thinking occurs or creativity occurs. And of course, if that leader leaves, that system's in a world of hurt. The second is this siloed approach, very, very common, where people build in departments, divisions. They even call them things like divisions, which is an interesting use of words because the word itself talks about the separateness and to keep things separate. But what that does in an organization, it creates pockets of work, it creates lack of connectivity, and it most importantly really hinders the level of learning and connections that can occur across an organization. The third is about this lack of clarity of a vision for sustainability. And as I mentioned before, it's often a very misunderstood dynamic. And to me, what that means is that the organization may have its goals, its vision and mission, but it doesn't have a vision for how the organization itself operates and is structured to deliver on its important outcomes. So often organizations, there's a real misfit between how they're structured and what they're designed to do and what they're capable of delivering. The fourth is a kind of a funny and fascinating one, and that's a lack of clarity between cause and effect. Probably the easiest way of understanding this is kind of a medical analogy. A lot of times organizations are all focused on the effects, the things that they don't want to have happen, and they develop their plans and strategies around that. But what they need to focus on is what's causing those effects. So in a medical analogy, you come into a doctor and you have a bunch of symptoms. The doctor takes those symptoms and he or she then looks at fundamentally what's causing those symptoms, not just treating the symptoms. And that's significant in organizations because it often keeps them in status quo if they're just dealing with with the effects rather than the causes. Information we know from many, many people, and Margaret Wheatley probably we know from her best about the importance of information. It's one of the key pillars in the below the green line strategy. Information has to do with, really, you think about it as oxygen in an organization. It breathes life into an organization. If you have any kind of hindrances to information, it literally blocks the flow of nutrients throughout that system and ideas in terms of their ability to generate and flow. And of course, information is totally connected to creativity. And so any hindrances in the flow and accessibility of information are a real blunder. And the last one is this failure to institutionalize what you're learning about sustainability. A classic example would be in school systems, professional learning communities, or communities of practice. Those are processes that we have learned build in so much sustainable attributes into an organization. And if a school or a school district doesn't literally institutionalize that, build it into all of what it does in its way of business, that's a failure about institutionalizing sustainable mechanisms. So in a very quick nutshell, those are the 7 blunders. And as you can imagine, those are a great place to start a conversation and organization among a leadership team about where you stand. There'll be a later little short video that actually describes a process that a team can utilize to assess themselves. And as a consultant looking at diagnosing a system, these blunders are very helpful filters to begin to look at the attributes of an organization and assess from a sustainability standpoint how well an organization is positioned around sustainability. So I hope this has been useful to you. So thank you for spending some time today looking at this important topic around sustainability, and we'll talk to you soon.